Hello again, everybody. This is John with BestPriceNutrition.com. Today I'm here to talk to you guys about a compound called pterostilbene. We've received a lot of questions about this recently on a wide range of topics. And some of the questions have come out because there's talk of this becoming like a miracle or wonder drug, and anytime we hear those words associated with a supplement, or for that matter anything for the most part, it kind of gives us pause and it makes us want to be skeptical and double check all the evidence. And that's what we do here. Sometimes a study will come out and it's very positive, and there are people out there that are going to try and exaggerate what those results actually were to benefit themselves. Monetarily is usually going to be the case. So what we try and do is peel through all the research and get down to the core and say, hey, here's exactly what it says, and not throw a bunch of hyperbole at you. So and a way to think about supplements is that they're there to fill gaps in your diets. They're built around the food supply, and if we could fill in gaps with it, that's where they're beneficial. But they're not there to fill gaping holes. So what that means is you should still have a nutrient-dense diet and some exercise. That's always going to make anything work better. I mean, I know that sounds obvious, but sometimes people have expectations that exceed what a supplement actually is. And that's not to say that they don't have positive effects, because they do, obviously. We sell supplements, we take them, but we like to put them in the proper context so as to give people the proper expectations when it comes to it, and not have you say, oh, this will just fix everything. But if you're smoking and drinking and constantly doing a lot of bad things to your body, it's really hard to overcome those things. So just wanted to get that out there. Now, on to pterostilbene. Now, pterostilbene is a stilbenoid. It's chemically related to resveratrol, as many of you have heard of. Resveratrol is talked about because it's found in red wine, and there's a lot of studies that have shown that a glass of red wine can help with cardiovascular risks and things like that, and that's really where it comes from. The one issue with resveratrol is, number one, it's very expensive. Two, it doesn't have the greatest oral bioavailability, so that's something to consider when we talk about resveratrol. Now, the nice thing about pterostilbene is that its oral bioavailability is somewhere between 67 and 94% greater than that of resveratrol. And it's got a half-life that's somewhere between 78 and 104 minutes, depending upon which research you look at. So it's got a longer half-life, it's more stable, and so that's a good thing, because as we said, resveratrol can get quite expensive when you're talking about that. Now, it's also going to be noted as dimethyl resveratrol or things like that. So if you see those other names, that's something to consider when you're looking at it. Now, the questions we've gotten have ranged on a variety of topics. That's because there's been actually a fair amount of research done on it. Now, most of it's been done on rodents. If you've seen our videos before, we always like to see them done on humans, but that doesn't mean we can't extrapolate certain things out of a study that's been done on rodents. We just want to put it in that proper context, because obviously humans are not rodents. And also studies done on cells that are in vitro, it's not the same either, because when you introduce it into a biological organism like a human, there's a lot of other factors that come to play. We come to find most things don't work in one isolated way. That's why when you watch a commercial for a drug, for instance, there's the side effects that come about, because you can't just affect one thing without affecting something else. It's just not how the human body works. There's far too much synergy. So where does pterostilbene come from? Well, it's found in blueberries and grapes. As I said, it's not in red wine. Even though it is in grapes, I think it has something to do with light and air and the fermentation. It must do something to it itself. So again, it's a double methylated version of resveratrol, so it's a little bit different. So that may be why it's not present there. Now, questions on what it'll do for cancer. Now, there's a lot of research going on how it may affect procarcinogens, and specifically the mechanism of action that they think it might be due to is its ability to inhibit an enzyme, a group of enzymes called cytochrome P450, or P450s as they're shortened. And these enzymes can basically cause procarcinogenic cells to grow and things like that. So this may have an inhibitory effect. Now, I say may because that research is still preliminary. It's still going on, but it's promising. It may also have a profound effect upon people with high cholesterol, high triglycerides, as well as having the ability to reverse cognitive decline. The theory on its ability to affect you in terms of cognition is that as an antioxidant, it's unique in the sense that it can pass the blood-brain barrier. It can go right to your memory center, known as the hippocampus, and it can prevent free radical damage there. That's what they think. Now, that was one study that was done on humans that we were able to extrapolate that data from. Pretty much they were giving them a concentrated blueberry juice. So I'd like to see some follow-ups to see how those effects are. And overall, we want to see follow-ups in terms of more human studies. Other questions that we've gotten as far as its role in diabetes and weight loss. That's probably the biggest thing that we're getting questions on by far and away. Those are buzz topics because, as you know, type 2 diabetes has become quite prevalent. And pretty much what they're finding is that they think the mechanism of action for metformin for pterostilbene is very similar to a drug called metformin. And specifically what it can do is suppress liver gluconeogenesis, which is basically where sugar is made in your liver. And they've done a few studies on rats. We were able to find one on humans. And you know, the research is promising at this point, we can tell you that. They have a proposed mechanism of action that we talked about with the ability to suppress liver gluconeogenesis, specifically on the PPAR alpha receptors. These are genes that play a key role in our body's ability to metabolize carbohydrates, and it basically regulates all those things. And it's the same idea with resveratrol. The thought is, can we affect how these genes are expressed, and that's really what they're looking at. Now, I'm being a little bit vague here because there's just not enough human evidence yet to say this is exactly what it does and we know for sure. I will say that going through it, it does seem promising. And when it's promising, that usually means that there's going to be some more follow-up studies. So we would like to see that. Now, some of the genetic effects that we also saw that it may help mimic something like calorie restriction. We found that by restricting calories in a lot of research. Now, assuming when you are on restricted calories, that you do, in lieu of having lower calories, you're getting a nutrient-dense diet. In other words, you're getting good vitamins, minerals, things like that in your diet. If you're just starving yourself, that's not healthy. However, being slightly below the amount of calories that you otherwise, need, or having an excess of calories, so to speak, not need, but excess going over, seems to have a profound effect upon genes that help with survival and living a longer life and a lot of health factors and things like that. You'll read people doing all kinds of fasting and things like that, and that's a whole nother topic for another day. But pretty much what happens is a lot of anti-cancer promoting genes can be activated when you put your body in that kind of state, and that's what they're proposing that pterostilbene may be able to do. Now, there's other thoughts too that it works synergistically with resveratrol. We don't know, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, resveratrol is something that doesn't have a great oral bioavailability. So that's pretty much where it's at in terms of the research on those topics. Again, don't want to give you guys false hope, or don't want to also sell it short. So it's very promising. We'd like to see more human studies on it. Now, other questions we get is, can it be taken with other stuff? Yes, it can. As I said, it's from blueberries. It's not going to interact with anything. If you're taking green coffee bean extract, chlorogenic acid, you could take it with that. Other people ask about raspberry ketones. That's something that can be taken with. That's another ingredient that there needs to be human studies on as well, as an aside. Is it safe? Yes. When to take it? Most of the research and bringing it all together needs to hone in better on the actual dose, but right now they're recommending 50 milligrams, 1 to 2 capsules per day. That's where it's at right now. Now, also a question we get is, what is Ptero Pure? Well, that's the trademarked version of it. We'd recommend sticking with that for right now because we don't know what the other versions are out there. We know that that one actually has the pterostilbene in there. It's not to say the others are knockoffs, but when something like this becomes popular, there's going to be quickly people coming out trying to benefit from that. So the Ptero Pure we know is the patented version. We know it has pterostilbene in there, so that's something to consider when you are looking at it. Other questions, sources, we talked about it, mainly blueberries. Also it's in the dark grapes as well. Yeah, I think that pretty much answers your questions. Now, over time, if there's other studies that do come out, we will do an update on it. Again, we just don't want people to get too caught up in the hysteria and stuff like that. This looks like a really, really promising ingredient. We do hope that more of this, human studies can come to light and hopefully show some of this evidence to be true. Again, we'd like to see more at this point, but it certainly wouldn't hurt to try it. It's not overly, overly expensive. Obviously, it's a relative term based upon your own budget, but it certainly is safe. And as we said, the big thing it may help with is somebody, maybe if you're at risk for type 2 diabetes or something like that, it may be a good thing to give it a shot because it may help you regulate your blood sugar. If you do that, a good thing to do is to get yourself a glucose monitor. You can buy it at Walgreens, CVS, and start regulating and watching your blood sugar along with the diet and see what kind of effect that has. Now, obviously, there's a lot of variables to adjust to there that you have to consider when you do that, but it is a way for you to monitor it yourself to see if you are having these effects and make a consideration, hey, maybe I'll try this and have an extra bottle if it did work for me the first time. So if you have any other questions on it, please post them in the comments section of the video or the blog. We're happy to answer them. Also, you could check us out at facebook.com/bestpricenutrition. Thank you for watching.